Hi, my name is Lorraine Rosal. I'm a project manager with the Office of Capital Improvements. I'm the project manager for the Commodore Trail Master Plan, the portion that the City of Miami is managing. Today, we're going to be providing you a brief presentation about the Commodore Trail Master Plan. We have already provided to the public 2 kickoff meetings in which we have introduced the project, and we deem necessary to come here and present the project at the earliest stage. So with me, we have Luisa Leite from Dover Cole, which is a planning firm that is part of the consulting firm that is assisting the City of Miami and the county with the plan. So with all being said, I introduce you to Luisa.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. I want to make sure you all can see my screen before I get started. Let me know if there's
Only if it's black.
anything I should be doing. It's just a matter of plugging it in, no? Should I do this? On?
And just so, to give you all a little bit of background on the HEP responsibility here is that the accommodations that they're going to need to make for any tree removals, the coral rock wall removals, anything that will have to happen to accommodate the new path or new roadway conditions will have to come before the HEP board, depending on the type of removal that will be needed, since it is a scenic transportation corridor and falls under the protection of Chapter 17, Article 2. And I'll share the little section of that so that way we could all familiarize ourselves little by little with the process. I thought it was important to have that introduction presentation to you all so that you could understand what the goals of the project were going to be and how they're working to accommodate most of the features that exist. But there will be, some conditions that will need to be either removed or, mitigated for life safety.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Just took a second. So as Lorraine mentioned, my name is Luisa Leite. I am a project manager at Dover Cole & Partners. We are working on behalf of OCI along with a group of consultants on the Commodore Trail Master Plan. And so as she mentioned, we have had 2 kickoffs, but we really wanted to take this opportunity before we head into our design workshops later this month to introduce the project to you all and see if you have any questions. So as I mentioned, there's a large number of stakeholders and people and organizations working on this plan. We're working with the lead agencies, which are OCI and the City of Miami, but we're also in close contact with Miami-Dade County, who also has the South Bayshore Improvements Project. So that's a portion of the Commodore Trail that they're actually planning for right now. They're in their conceptual phases of planning and design. We're also working with the City of Coral Gables on the last portion of the Commodore Trail that it falls within their jurisdiction. And we have a list of consultants working together. Leading the project is Chen Moore and Associates, as well as ourselves at Dover Cole. We'll be doing the 30% design, and then Chen Moore will be doing the remaining portion of the conceptual design. We're also working with Caltrans, Biscayne Engineering, and eSciences. And we've been meeting a ton with community partners. Friends of the Commodore Trail have been very, very deeply involved since the beginning. We've also reached out to groups from the Underline, Bike Walk Coral Gables, Bike Coconut Grove, and many more. So for those who aren't familiar that well with the Commodore Trail, I assume most of you are, it's a 5-mile walking, biking, and running trail in the city of Miami and a small portion within the city of Coral Gables. I call it a walking, biking, and running trail. Today it's kind of a hodgepodge of sidewalks and leftover spaces on the road. And so what we're really trying to do here is complete the Commodore Trail. It has a long history, over 50 years in the making. It was officially established in 1969, but the trail's history dates back all the way to the 1880s, when South Bayshore was first kind of implemented into the city. Friends of Commodore Trail have been kind of pushing for this trail to happen properly for many years now, and they've shared some of that history with us. As Anna mentioned, we are working within the confines of the Environmental Preservation District, but also the Scenic Transportation Corridor. I won't read through all this, I think she kind of mentioned, but one of the main reasons to engage with you all at this point, very early on in our planning process and design process is that we know that being in the scenic transportation corridor, which a large portion of the trail falls within, we have to take special care when making all kinds of design decisions, from relocating potential trees or engaging with those historic walls along South Miami, for example. So the work is being divided into 4 main segments. We are responsible for design for 3 of those segments. Segment 3 is the South Bayshore project, so that's actually within Miami-Dade County's scope of work for their South Bayshore Drive Improvements Project. They actually had their first public kickoff last week. So in terms of where we are in the process, we're still early on. We had 2 kickoff meetings in March, and now in May, we're going to have some design workshops where we actually start looking at possible options for how to improve the corridor along certain segments. And then through June and August, throughout the summer, we're actually going to be working on putting together the 30% schematic design. The end of the summer, we'll have another public presentation. And obviously, between now and then, we'd like to engage you all again once we have some preliminary drawings done. So some of the key issues we've been identifying, and this is all things that we also raised at our first 2 public kickoffs along the scenic transportation corridor. So I'm going to go through a couple of those kind of as food for thought.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a difference between the Commodore Trail and the Underline? Is it the same thing, or do they merge at some point, or is it 2 different entities?
The Commodore Trail and what? Sorry.
The Underline.
Oh, the Underline. So they are separate.
Okay.
But it is important to us. I'll just go back to this slide because I think it shows it.
Your map is not, I'm not sure.
So if you see on, I don't know if you guys can see on your screens what I'm saying, but the Underline goes, of course, along the M path, which is under the Metro Rail.
I get it. Sorry, thank you.
But it is really important that this forms a connection to the Underline. And there's a couple of places where we want to make sure we do have safe connections, like from the Vizcaya station, for example, to the Commodore Trail. It's actually the shortest distance between the 2. And also near Alice Wainwright Park around Brickell to connect as well.
And one more question.
Yeah?
The north-south entity on the map with green dots that's going north-south, is that another, is that just a borderline for something? From the word City Hall, it goes up to the middle of the Underline?
Those are
what are those?
Bike lanes.
Okay.
Bike lanes, yeah. So that's one of the opportunities for connecting between the 2.
Thank you.
Kind of outside our direct scope of work, but as a part of the master plan, we do need to think about how people are getting to the trail.
Chair, just may I, for the record, want to announce that board member Jordan Trachtenberg has joined the meeting. For the record, thanks.
Great, thank you.
So I want to quickly just go through our priorities through this master plan design process. And this comes from the community and all the engagement that's been done to get us to this point today. Our number 1 priority is to complete and upgrade the trail for people of all ages and abilities to be able to safely walk, bike, and roll along it. And this means safely connecting people to the key trails, parks, and landmarks that are found all throughout this corridor, to reduce pinch points and obstacles, provide separation between cars, biking, and walking wherever possible. We know that there's some constraints in achieving that, given the size of the right-of-way, but wherever we can to do so, to enhance lighting and signage, and improve existing trail crossings. Our second priority is to grow community awareness of the trail and establish a cohesive identity for it. A lot of people, even lifelong Coconut Grove residents, do not know what the Commodore Trail is. That's definitely something that, as a part of our public process, we're trying to address together with the advocate groups that are also doing this work on the ground every day. And finally, we want to set up an implementation and maintenance plan. So as we get to the end of our planning process, to get all of the different key stakeholders from the county and city and Coral Gables in a room together so we can really start thinking about maintenance. This is especially important when looking at securing funding moving forward. It's very important to have some kind of plan in place on how the trail will be maintained once improved. And so some guiding design principles that we've kind of come to knowing what we know about working in this community, the removal of trees will only be a last resort. So this is something we've been telling everyone we are speaking to. We're not interested in removing any trees unless absolutely necessary to ensure that we reach that number one objective of safety for all users. We do want to add trees wherever possible as well, because there are some segments of the trail where there's really no shade and they can get pretty uncomfortable. We will only alter historic walls and elements if they threaten the safety of trail users or limit ADA accessibility. So again, only when absolutely necessary. We're not really interested in disrupting anything along the scenic corridor unless it's an absolute necessity for safety reasons. And 4, we're trying to reduce excessive asphalt, lane widths, and in a few cases, excess vehicular capacity to improve the corridor for all users. Today, most of the land along this corridor is dedicated to vehicles and not to people. Yes?
What would be one of the last resorts to make a tree be removed?
If we have no room to expand the trail or to create a safe buffer between people running and biking and fast-moving vehicles, because there's one tree in the way, that would be a case where we suggest removing a tree. And when I say removing, I think we would really look to replace it in other areas of the trail where we know we need shade and we don't have it. So I think we want to be at a net positive of trees after this project is done. And of course, we will be documenting as we get further along. We're still going out and conducting the survey, so we don't yet have exactly every single point of every single tree, but that's almost completed. And so when we start laying out the entire project, we'll have an exact idea of which trees are the ones that we may recommend. And of course, that'll go before you all again when we get to that point.
Do you have a minimum height as to which you will be mitigating your trees with, or installing a minimum height that you will install new mitigated trees? Do you have a minimum?
Of new trees?
Yes.
Not at this time.
Okay.
But we can, I mean, I'm sure we'll get there. We're so early on, we're not quite there yet in terms of making those decisions. But.
Okay.
So just to show the existing facilities along this corridor, because it's, again, we say Commodore Trail, but it's not really a trail today. And so this map, and I apologize, it's small, it's a very long corridor, but just gives you an idea of the areas where it's a proper separated trail, that's in the bold red line. In a lot of places, it's just a sidewalk and not a very wide sidewalk when you consider that there's people biking and running and walking along it all together. And then there are some portions in the blue that are just shoulders on the road, and that's what you can see in the photo. So this is along South Bayshore. It just becomes kind of a shoulder, and a lot of times you have landscape trucks parking there, middlemen parking there, and then you can get into a kind of a dangerous situation. And then there's only 2 places along the corridor right now where we have a shared street. So cyclists and joggers are forced to go onto the road with cars. And that's at Edgewater Drive, which is in the city of Coral Gables, and also in downtown Coconut Grove as you're passing through the restaurants on Main Highway. And so there's definitely a lot of high conflict areas where people at very different speeds are forced to kind of interact with each other very closely that don't feel safe. And that includes portions of South Miami and South Bayshore, certainly as you get to downtown Coconut Grove, near CocoWalk, a couple places where Main Highway turns onto Douglas, that's a difficult corner, where Douglas and Ingram meet, that's another challenging corner, and then Edgewater, because that's, again, one of those shared streets. And I'll just go through these a little bit. Some of the challenges we've documented, we've walked and biked the whole corridor several times at this point. And so there's definitely a lack of high visibility and what we would call, standard trail crossings, where all of these driveways are cutting across the trail and they aren't forewarned that there are trail users crossing. So that's something we definitely want to improve. Again, there's an issue of a lot of people parking on the trails today. That's also something we have to address. Buses, mailmen, landscapers, policemen who are parking along the trail. Here again is that area of the trail where it becomes a shoulder. This is along South Miami near Glencoe. And so again, now riders are forced to go around these cars against many times high-speed moving cars. There are some issues with standing water and stormwater, and I know that the county is specifically looking at drainage improvements as well along the South Bayshore Drive project. So whereas we're primarily focused on a master plan for the Commodore Trail, the county is also looking at stormwater and drainage improvements for their Bayshore project. So there are a couple pinch points too. So here's one of those in Kennedy Park. This is a really hard, sharp turn that you have to make to get onto the Siegendorf path. It gets very narrow, and it's like almost a 90-degree turn if you're wanting to get from the existing shoulder trail onto the nice trail into the park. And so this is a case where we may not suggest removing the gate if it's of any significance, but we would probably realign the trail so that there's another way to get onto that path besides this one entrance and connection. Along South Miami, this is another kind of dangerous pinch point. We were actually at LaSalle this morning, and we were meeting with their operations director. This is something they have brought to us as a concern. A lot of the cars, mostly which are teenagers driving, they're leaving LaSalle to turn right to go north on South Miami. And because of the historic gate is so tight, they actually can't see any trail users crossing. And so there's a concern, and you can see this white car on the photo on the left, he's making that right turn, but he has no warning of whether people are running or biking down that trail. So again, this could be an example of the kind of thing where we might want to suggest a way to open this or what options we have to kind of improve that conflict point.
Mirrors?
In general, along South Miami Ave, there is a lot of excess pavement. We all know that this becomes a speedway most times of the day, certainly at night or in low traffic times. And so, as I mentioned, kind of our guiding principles of design, where we can reduce lane widths, that would both help us reduce speed, but also make crossing distances a lot shorter for people trying to get across the road. So this is an example of areas where we think we can definitely narrow the amount of asphalt. There are a lot of obstructions you can find along the existing sidewalk on South Miami, like the placement of certain bus shelters, infrastructure, lamp posts, that can often constrain the amount of space you have. And here's another example of that excess asphalt, where we would be interested in having a deeper conversation on how to shrink the amount of asphalt at this intersection in particular. It's such a vast sea that you have to cross on foot, and this is an especially important connection to the Vizcaya metro station. So another area we would want to consider. But again, most of this is happening within the roadway, so very little, I think, is going to actually impact or touch, like I said, the historic structures themselves. Here's an example where we would want to improve access and make it at a minimum ADA accessible. You have this wonderful city bike station, one that I've used a couple times. It's very difficult to walk along the path that gets you there. And with that, I just want to announce our upcoming meetings. Like I mentioned, the goal of the 3 upcoming workshops is that we're going to focus on each segment, with the exception of the county's segment, which is segment 3. But on Wednesday, May 18th, we'll be looking specifically at segment 2, which goes from the city of Coral Gables limits all the way to basically Kenneth Myers Park. And then the following day, on Thursday, we'll be meeting with the city of Coral Gables staff and presenting segment 1, which is in the city of Coral Gables. So that's Cocoa Plum Circle to the city limits along Douglas. And then the following week on Thursday, we will be discussing segment 4, and that one is from Mercy Way to Rickenbacker. And the goal of those meetings is to have, preliminary design options, I'll say, because most of the time we're presenting more than one option of how we could rethink the corridor to make it safer with the community and to get a sense of where their preferences are. And just in case any of you are interested or have additional questions after today, there's a city website for the Commodore Trail. We made a little shorter URL called Plan Commodore Trail that'll get you there. It's easier to remember. And Lorraine already introduced herself, but she is the project manager for OCI. I have her email here if you all have any questions moving forward. And with that, I'll open it up for a discussion.
Any questions?
This is like a mini workshop right here with the board. I'm interested to see, you got a tough thing to do because there's a lot of places that aren't really a trail or fit for a trail.
Yeah.
And just at the face of it, just looking at it, one of the main concerns I have are the walls. And the walls are really important, even though the one next to Siegendorf entrance to the trail, and then of course Vizcaya, and even some of those sidewalks that are substandard, those were original Vizcaya sidewalks. So that's James Deering stuff from 1912. So it's, you know, just my input is the thing that gives a character is its quirkiness and its hodgepodge history of structures and whatnot. That's why it's going to be hard to make it work with the traffic. So I can't wait to see.
Yeah, we understand. And I think with where the walls are, you know, we love them and we have, you know, very little interest in changing them in any way.
Well, the thought about getting into Kennedy Park, can't you just make the entrance on the other side of that column?
Yeah.
So that would be simple. Leave the opening that's there and just go around it.
Yeah. I think that's what the county is
Yeah.
looking at doing already in their, since that's in their portion of the trail. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.